The war in Ukraine continues to impact food security across the globe. Russia and Ukraine account for about a third of global wheat exports. According to a latest report by S&P, this region could be hit harder due to its reliance on food imports from the two countries. It says Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco and Tunisia are most at risk. Let's get more on this with Satyam Panday. He's Chief Economist, EM, at S&P Global Ratings. He joins us live from San Francisco today. Satyam, thank you so much for your time. We know that food prices are a key concern globally at the moment, and this is also translating into total inflation as well. To begin, just outline the size and scope of this crisis for us, particularly in the MENA region.
First of all, thanks for having me, Dan. So we looked into some of the vulnerabilities in the region, and specifically for those who are importers of food, fuel, and fertilizers. And like you said in the opening, we found that basically Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia are the five that may be fragile in this situation. There are some, there are some reasons for these. Basically, the three that stand out are the net importers of both food and energy, basically speaking. And then all of these countries also happen to have larger sourcing of food, especially coming from Ukraine and Russia region. And then you have the fertilizers as well, that Belarus is also facing some of the restrictions. And then altogether, you have food specifically. Food basically makes up about your 20 to 35% of the expenditure basket for the people in these countries, and they are facing this higher food price coming into the year. But all in all, it's quite nuanced still when you think about it, especially given some of the reserves that they have in the food. Especially when you think of Morocco, which did get a lot of its food imports in the earlier part of the year. You have, Jordan, that's sitting on the food inventory for maybe about another 16 months of consumption or so. But then you have another country like Egypt, which may be running out of the food shortages might be coming up maybe as soon as November of 2022, given the production rates that we are seeing.
And Satyam, this latest report really highlights the challenges that a lot of these countries are facing, not just in their recovery from the COVID pandemic, but now attempting to fight inflation and, of course, soaring food prices, which is also likely to have an impact, you say, on social stability as well. Is there a risk that we could see rising tensions in the region as a result?
Right. What history has shown us, during times when food, especially, is running through this persistently inflationary period, we do get these, strikes and social unrest. So especially when you have higher youth unemployment rates, going into it. And right now, coming out of COVID, when the recovery is still fragile, we're facing this kind of a situation where, yes, the probability of social unrest is ticking up, especially in these countries. The distributional effect, especially speaking for the food prices, is quite large. Those who are in the lower income scale, the lower 10% of the income distribution generally tends to spend about 50% of their expenditures on food, right? So this does exacerbate some of the inequality that is inherent in the society.
Exactly, particularly when it comes to youth unemployment, as you say. And looking back through history, even more recently, like in 2011, for example, you've highlighted that the Arab Spring was also associated with a rise in food prices. So rising tensions, socioeconomic instability is something to be looking out for. But Satyam, what do you think MENA and economies across the region, leadership across the region, governments across the region can actually do to cushion some of the blow here?
Well, some of the cushions come in your, traditional forms of subsidies and very targeted forms of direct payments to those who are actually at risk of food insecurity, especially the lower income side. I think that would be something that the governments would be sort of focusing on. But still, we have a complex trade-off here when some of these countries are trying to come out of this pandemic-related fiscal issues. They want to consolidate some of these fiscal issues, and they're having a hard time. It's a complex trade-off that they're facing, and this is something to watch out for in the coming months.
Indeed. How do you expect conditions to evolve from here? And has the S&P analysis given us any insight into whether or not we're going to see conditions actually starting to ease anytime soon?
You know, it really depends, because this is all about an assumption that the war in Russia and Ukraine is going to, go on for some time now. And if things were to get better out there, if things were to reverse course, obviously we will have a little bit of a relief. But if it were to get longer, then we do have, not just in this region, but in the sub-Saharan region as well, that we'll have some countries in acute shortages of food.